Hey y'all, it's Chris with Rockin 8 Farm, and please, those of you that live in the north, do not get too angry with me because today we are going to talk about spring garden prep. I know if you're someone that's not even going to start your indoor plant starts for another 2 months, you have no idea why I'm talking about spring garden prep, but here in Central Texas, it is time to start getting these beds ready for a mid-March to April 1st at the latest planting of spring vegetables. So, you start getting the beds ready December, January, February. That way they're good to go for March and April. Before we jump into that too far, just let me remind everybody to please subscribe if you haven't done so. Click that notification bell, and please take the time to stop by rockin8farm.com. So y'all, here's the bed that we are going to work on first. It's one of my long 4x16 beds, and this bed had about 3 or 4 inches of wood chips in it when we planted it last spring. So it's been sitting here for a full year, and I want you to notice that even after all that time, this is my weed pressure. And the reason I'm even starting to get weed pressure is because of how much these wood chips have broken down. Y'all, you're gonna kind of trip out when I show you this right now. So here we go. We got a bed that's just covered in wood chips, right? Nothing but wood chips as far as the eye can see. But take a look at this. I'm gonna very lightly brush this small layer of wood chips off, and look what's right here. Thick, black, rich, composty garden soil, y'all. Look how loose this is. It doesn't take anything, just with my hand, to dig down several inches into this bed. And look how thick and black and rich all of that is. That's wood chips, y'all. That's why I love them. So what we're gonna do to get these beds ready is very simple. I'm gonna pull back the very thin layer of wood chips that exists. I'm just gonna go ahead and brush them right out onto the ground. And I'm gonna put in a nice thick layer, probably at least 2 inches of compost. But before I do that, I have a little trick I want to show you, so check this out. Hey y'all, time for next steps here. The first thing I want you to notice is that you still see some chunky wood in the garden beds. That's okay. It really doesn't matter. Also, if you notice here, these 2 piles, that was like the total sum of all of the wood chips that came off of the garden bed. And there was a 3 to 4 inch thick layer across 64 square feet of garden bed when we put the bed in and put new chips on it last year. So, I mean, you can see how well these wood chips break down. So now we just got to move on to our next steps and, follow along from there. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to add in a good organic fertilizer. Listen to me, y'all. If organic is not the way that you want to go, please just grow food. Yes, I consider myself to be a permaculturist. Yes, I believe that organic principles are best. But I think that creating sustainability for you and your family, quite frankly, is more important. We're not talking about you gardening on 60,000 acres with all kinds of runoff, creating horrible problems for the environment from your chemical fertilizers. So if you use a 13-13-13 chemical fertilizer in your garden, understand that over the long run, you're depleting your soil and creating a habitat that is not very inviting for beneficial nematodes and earthworms and things of that nature. But if I can just get you growing your own food and then work on the organic stuff, then I think that's where we need to start. So all you people out there that are like acting like people are the greatest sinners in the world because they get into garden and they're not 100% organic, please leave them alone, because we need to get them growing food first, and then we can work on the how to grow food more healthily and more sustainably. All right, now that I'm off my soapbox, I'm just gonna take a fork. It's not a broad fork, it's just a fork. I'm just gonna kind of loosen up the soil a little bit and let some of this fertilizer work its way down in. And now it's time for the secret ingredient. It's not real super secret and it makes a ton of sense, but it is gonna surprise some of y'all. What's my super secret ingredient? Good old chicken feed. All right, now listen, purpose of the chicken feed is to feed biological life. You put chicken feed in your garden beds, you are going to see tons of earthworms. This is gonna draw them in. It's gonna feed the ones that are already there. They're gonna start defecating in the soil, which, earthworm castings are awesome fertilizer. And it just encourages biological life within the garden bed. So you don't want to waste a big old bag of chicken feed. I got that. This particular year, I went out to my barn and I grabbed a bag of chicken feed because it was just easier for me to do. What I've done in the past is I've gone around to my local feed stores and I've asked them if they've had any bags of feed that are ripped open or have started to go kind of moldy, or they've been sitting there way too long and they just weren't really good for feed anymore. Sweet feed really works awesome because it has, you know, some molasses and stuff in it too. So any kind of feed, really, get it in the garden. It's going to feed that biological life, and you can get it free or discounted if you're just willing to ask. All right, y'all, so as you can see, I probably went a little heavy on the chicken feed here, and that, I mean, it's okay. It's better to have too much than not enough, I guess. But you want to use your chicken feed at about twice what you use your fertilizer. So my organic fertilizer says a cup for every 10 square feet when you're doing a bed that, you know, for a second time. So 60 square foot bed, roughly 6 cups of fertilizer. I could have done about 12 cups of chicken feed. I probably went a little above that. That's okay. Once you got the chicken feed in, your next step is about a 2-inch layer of some very nice compost. One of the things I want you to notice is that the consistency of this compost is very similar to the consistency of my soil. And that's just that process of the wood chips breaking down on top of the soil over the course of a year. All right, y'all. Now the next step that you're about to see, which is the last step, is going to seem very counterproductive to you. But before you shut me off and just say this guy has lost his mind, hear me out. What you're watching me do is take wood chips off of my walking paths to put them up onto my beds. I'm then going to obviously have to replace the wood chips in my walking path. So why do twice the work? Why not just take new wood chips and put them on the beds? Hear me out. I have a perfect side-by-side here. Look at wood chips that have been sitting on my walking path for a year and how broken down they are already. See, even as we get into the stuff that hasn't lost its color to sunshine yet, look how broken down that is already. And you're going to see a lot of good mold in these wood chips as well. Mold that's really good for the garden. Here's brand new wood chips. Look how chunky they are. Look how no matter how far I dig down, they are not broken down at all yet. So I take wood chips off of my walking path that have been breaking down for a year, and I put them up onto my beds. This saves me in a lot of ways. Number one, the wood chips are already starting to break down, so now they're really gonna finish breaking down in the garden beds. And they will basically become compost by the time I do this again next year. You guys saw how I basically took no wood chips at all off of my beds. And you can kind of see behind me how much wood chips I've just put on my beds. Aside from the breakdown, there's other benefits as well. There are some woods that you don't necessarily really want to put a ton of on your garden beds when they're brand new. Cedar is a good example, and we get a lot of juniper shavings in our wood chips. So by letting those juniper shavings sit on the ground for a year, as you walk over them and the rain washes over them and the sun beats on them, it breaks them down enough, and it allows enough of those allelopathic qualities that cedar is known to have to leach out of the wood chips. I personally have never really had a big problem with cedar because for the most part I'm planting from plant starts, and what cedar supposedly inhibits is germination. So it's where you're direct sowing seeds that you might discover that you have some issues if you have brand new fresh cedar wood chips on your gardens. But I've personally never even experienced that. So the fact that I leave these, some cedar, because it's all different kinds of stuff, but there is cedar in it. The fact that I leave these cedar wood chips on the ground for a full year, getting rained on and walked on and sun beating on them, I definitely don't have any problems when I pull them up and put them onto the gardens. So several different reasons for me to pull wood chips up off my walking beds and put them onto my garden beds. And then I'll just go hit these giant piles that I've got sitting over here on my property and replace the stuff in the walking beds with brand new, fresh, beautiful chips that are comprised of a lot of different kind of woods, including cedar. So now my garden is going to look gorgeous, and my garden beds are going to have a lot of beneficial qualities as opposed to putting the new chips on the beds. So other than giving it a rake and smoothing it out, that's it for garden beds. Like I said, the soil is beautiful in itself. So pull back those wood chips, expose that beautiful soil, add a little bit of fertilizer to it, Get that feed in there. You're really going to see that it makes a difference as far as your earthworm population. And fresh coat of compost. Hopefully you make your own. If not, find a place to get it. And fresh, you know, a fresh layer of wood chips, preferably aged wood chips. And you're good to go. That is garden prep that works anywhere. Works great here in Central Texas. Now I've just got 20 more beds to go. So I better get back to work. So until I see each and every one of you again, remember, be happy and live healthy.